You know that feeling, that sort of deep down pull towards understanding what really matters? Like beyond just the day-to-day
Oh,
wins.
absolutely. It's that search for real wisdom, something lasting.
Exactly. And well, that's why you're here, right? You want to get to the core of things and get there efficiently. So let's jump in.
Today we're looking at this really fascinating ancient meeting, one that still, echoes today.
We're diving into that story from 2 Chronicles 9, the Queen of Sheba visiting King Solomon. Think about it. A powerful queen making this huge journey.
Yeah, not for treasure, not primarily anyway, but for wisdom.
Right. So our aim here is to unpack what happened, pull out the key insights, and see, well, how does this ancient story speak to us now? How can it maybe even strengthen our faith? And we'll try to do it pretty quickly. So where does this all kick off?
Well, the Queen of Sheba arrives in Jerusalem, and it's quite the entrance. She's got this massive caravan, camels, spices, just tons of gold, precious stones.
Not exactly sneaking in. This was a statement.
Definitely. And the text makes her purpose clear. She came uh, to prove Solomon with hard questions.
And not just that, right? It says she wanted to commune with him about all that was in her heart. That sounds deeper than just a quiz.
It does. It suggests a real search for meaning, for understanding. She had heard reports, obviously, incredible reports about his wisdom.
And Solomon, how did he measure up?
Apparently, he exceeded expectations. The account says there was nothing hid from Solomon which he told her not. He answered everything.
Wow. Just imagine that level of insight.
It must have been staggering. But it wasn't just the Q&A that impressed her, was it?
No, not at all. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. She sees the palace he built, the food on his tables, the way his staff was organized.
Yeah, the servants, the ministers, even their uniforms, their apparel, and the cupbearers. It mentions all that specifically.
And that detail about his ascent by which he went up into the house of the Lord, that feels significant.
It really does. It kind of hints that his wisdom wasn't just, intellectual horsepower. It was connected to his faith, his devotion.
Like the whole system, the administration, the splendor, the wisdom, it all stemmed from, or was at least linked to, this spiritual core.
That seems to be the implication. His connection to God wasn't separate from his rule.
Yeah.
It was integral.
And seeing all this, the whole picture, that's what led to her famous reaction, right?
Exactly. She basically says, okay, I heard amazing things back home, but honestly, I didn't really believe it.
Until I saw it with my own eyes.
Right. And then she says, and wow, they didn't even tell me the half of it. Your wisdom and prosperity are far greater than the fame I heard.
That's some review. It completely blew away her expectations.
Totally. And then she adds something really telling. Happy are thy men, and happy are these thy servants, which stand continually before thee and hear thy wisdom.
She saw that just being around that kind of wisdom was a blessing in itself, that it brought happiness, fulfillment.
Yeah, she recognized its immense value. But notice where she ultimately gives the credit.
Ah, yes. She doesn't just praise Solomon. She says, "Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighted in thee to set thee on his throne."
To be king for the Lord thy God, because thy God loved Israel. Therefore made he thee king, to do judgment and justice.
She points straight to God as the source of his position, his ability, his purpose, ruling justly because God loved his people.
And that's a powerful point for us, isn't it? Thinking about where our own successes or insights come from.
Definitely. Does acknowledging a higher source foster maybe more humility, more responsibility?
I think it can. It certainly shifts the focus. And recognizing that connection that God might be working through people or circumstances, that can really bolster your faith, seeing evidence of something bigger at play.
And she backs up her admiration with action. The gifts she gives are just incredible.
Staggering. 120 talents of gold, that's a fortune. Plus this great abundance of spices like nothing seen before, and more precious stones.
It shows how much she valued what she experienced.
Absolutely. And Solomon, in return, was also generous. He gave her all her desire, whatsoever she asked, on top of, a proportional return gift.
So a real exchange based on mutual respect, fueled by her encounter with his wisdom.
Yeah. And the text then kind of zooms out, reminding us just how incredibly wealthy Solomon was overall.
Right, the 666 talents of gold coming in annually, the gold shields, the ivory throne covered in gold.
Even the drinking cups were all gold. It notes that silver wasn't really considered valuable in his time, just astonishing wealth.
But crucially, even with all that gold, what drew the world's attention?
His wisdom. Kings came from everywhere, the text says, specifically to hear his wisdom that God had put in his heart. And they brought gifts, too. acknowledging that intellectual and spiritual wealth.
So his fame rested on wisdom, sourced from God even more than the gold. And his reign, 40 years, recorded by prophets. Quite a legacy.
A massive legacy. So let's pivot. How do we take this ancient story and we'll apply it now? How does it speak to our lives and maybe strengthen faith today?
Well, that initial drive, the Queen's curiosity, that seems really relevant. That willingness to ask hard questions, to seek understanding, not just accept things at face value.
Totally. In leadership, in learning, even in our own spirituality, that kind of intellectual honesty, that drive to question and explore, it's vital for growth, isn't it? She wasn't afraid to admit she didn't know or didn't believe until she saw.
And it contrasts so sharply with just, image or spin. Solomon's respect wasn't just because he was king. It was earned through real insight, wisdom, maybe that moral clarity we talked about.
That's a key point. True influence comes from substance, not just status or wealth. His wisdom had weight.
And what about the generosity, Solomon giving the queen all her desire?
Yeah, that speaks to using our own blessings, whatever they are, influence, knowledge, resources to help others. Right?
Yeah.
Mentorship, sharing what we know, hospitality, it reflects that same spirit.
Using what we have to uplift others.
Exactly. And thinking about all that wealth Solomon had, the story still ends with his death, like everyone's does.
Right. It reminds you that even the biggest worldly success is, well, temporary.
It is. So what lasts? What's the real legacy? It seems to be more about character, the wisdom shared, the justice done.
Which brings us back to the source. The queen saw Solomon's wisdom and success as gifts from God.
And that's maybe the most powerful takeaway for strengthening faith. When we recognize the good things in our lives, the insights we gain, the successes we have when we see them potentially as gifts coming from something beyond ourselves.
It fosters humility, gratitude.
Yes, both. And that recognition that awareness of a divine hand, possibly at work, can create a much deeper, stronger foundation for belief. It connects our daily lives to something bigger.
So the bottom line seems pretty clear. Wisdom, character, acknowledging a source beyond ourselves, that's the stuff with lasting value way more than gold or thrones.
Precisely. Which leaves us with a question for you listening right now. How can you, in your own life, make seeking wisdom and building character a real priority?
Yeah, how can this ancient story, this queen seeking answers, this king blessed with insight, inspire you to go deeper in your own understanding and maybe strengthen your own faith by considering where true wisdom and success might actually come from?
It's something profound to think about. That potential divine connection is a real basis for belief today.